All right, we should be live. You're listening to ACAB Radio. This is episode 27. We're presented to you by Food Not Bombs Las Vegas. That's foodnotbombslasvegas.org and Nevada Cop Block, nvcopblock.org. We're your hosts, King Ron, Jay Leifer, and Kelly Special K Patterson. We got a great show for you guys today. We got some body cam footage, local stories, national viral news stories, all kinds of good stuff. But I wanted to start with your articles, Kelly, on Nevada Cop Block. Might as well start with this one, which is the most recent officer-involved shooting here in Vegas.
Yeah, it's the guy that was armed with a fucking piece of plastic with some duct tape, or not duct tape, electrical tape around it.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is, I saw the original report of that, and it said somebody had called to report that there was a person with either a tool or a long stick.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from the spokesperson at Metro that comes out to do their interviews. And in that article, you can see the video of that where she states that.
Yeah, I remember watching that the day that it happened. She was on scene, and she said somebody called the police on, like you said, a tool or a long stick. Nobody mentioned anything about a weapon.
There's never a weapon
So my obvious reaction was, well, the guy wasn't doing anything illegal in the first place, so they should have left him the fuck alone.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, and I also brought this up in that article. The idea, so when they came up with the body cam and they're doing the press conference for that, they turned around and said that it was reported that he was carrying a machete, and also that he was either a machete or a Slim Jim, and that he was looking into cars and acting like he was going to break into the cars.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing about that is the original story doesn't have anything about him looking into cars.
Right, they add to the story as to
the
narrative.
Yeah, so the other, people being reported as suspicious within neighborhoods is not, and not doing anything, especially when it's people of color, is not an unusual thing. It's not an uncommon thing. That they have that Nextdoor app. And there was a big scandal because people were reporting minorities walking through their neighborhood as suspicious people on that app.
I've seen it myself on that app, man, constantly through my neighborhood.
They had to do a giant update on that app to try to stop that. That's how prevalent it was. And there was also a story of there was an Indian family, and one of their relatives, I believe it was the grandfather of that family.
Oh, right. I remember this, yeah.
And I think it was in Baltimore. I'm not sure exactly where it was, but it was a pretty well-known case. He was just walking through the neighborhood, and somebody reported him as suspicious, and the cops came out and broke his back. And I think he ended up dying, but he was definitely...
He was an elderly gentleman. He was a grandfather. It wasn't like some young guy.
Yeah, and he had done nothing. He was simply
dark. He was dark-skinned.
He was a person of color within the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So somebody calling up and reporting somebody as being suspicious by itself is not an uncommon thing. So the idea that somebody called up and reported him as being suspicious doesn't justify them murdering him.
Yeah.
So, like I said, when the body cam came out, then they had adjusted the story to... This guy had a machete in the original call, and he was breaking in, or he was acting like he was going to break into cars.
Yeah. So people would think, hearing that, oh, well, this is just new details coming out, or it's not that big of a deal. But what they're doing is they're changing the narrative to justify using that, deadly force.
That's right, lethal force, absolutely.
When it's the original story doesn't call for that type of force, but they change small details, turning, a gentleman walking down the street with a tool, acting suspicious, into somebody going door to door, going into vehicles, might have a Slim Jim or a machete. So it definitely changes the story, right?
And the original interview, why wouldn't she have brought up those things?
Exactly.
And what'll happen is 2 years from now, when they do that, fake fact-finding
mission,
review,
if they even do,
where
right.
they don't try at all to find any facts,
Mm-hmm.
they'll release the 911 call, and it won't have that on there, but people will have forgotten because it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And they've done that.
Mm-hmm.
Keith Childress was murdered because he was somebody that they tried to stop, and they claimed that he had something dark in his hand at first. Then it became he had a cell phone in his hand, and they thought it was a gun, and he refused to drop it. When we went to the that fake fact-finding review,
right.
turns out the cell phone was in his pocket.
Yep.
It was not even in his hand.
There was nothing in his hand.
Yeah.
And I think I'm the only one that reported that, by the way.
Yeah, it's
So.
definitely up to independent media to combat these narratives, because the public at large, they don't really notice these minuscule changes. The news headlines change so quickly with everything going on. I mean, if they even talk about police brutality, it's just a 30-second blurb and people forget about it, move on. But we notice these little differences, and it's key in them relieving themselves of any culpability, basically.
And the general gist of that story is obviously the changing narrative. But, we've already mentioned it before. When I was watching the actual body cam video, they state that at one point, at the point where they shot him, he was only 10 feet away from them.
Right.
And he had moved that stick around. He had adjusted his hat while it was in his hand and stuff. So there's no way from 10 feet away you could not realize that there was no blade there. It was not a sword. It was, you could tell that, And
you could tell that he, had some issues.
For sure.
That they should have called in, a mental health professional.
CIT.
And he was never aggressive.
No.
Never aggressive.
never attacked them. And
never made threats.
And they have
like
their
that.
gun out pointed at them. The thing that they used to fall back on when people actually had a knife was this 21-foot rule. I think it was 27-feet rule. So the 27-foot rule was supposedly before you could pull your gun out and defend yourself, somebody with a knife could be on top of you and do, attack you with the knife and do, deadly damage. But the thing about that, even that ruling is twisted because they already have their gun out and they have it pointed at him. So there's not that lag between realizing that he was coming after you, pulling your gun out, aiming it at him, and shooting him. You've already done all that. It's just a matter of pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, as I said, there's no way they didn't know that he didn't have a knife. So first of all, the best he could do is hit them with a plastic stick.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there's two of them. So one of them could have took a taser out, hit him with the taser, and the other one could have kept the gun trained on him so that if he, did something or tried to attack them or the taser didn't work, they still have that gun available if necessary.
So we talked about this shooting a lot in the last video. We also, in our last episode, we also showed the body cam video. So if you guys want to see that, check out our last episode.